I'm Cath and this is made by Cathcraft. Thank you very much for joining me for this video, which is going to be a sewing makes video. So I don't think I've done a sewing makes video for a while, but I have been sewing and making some new garments. So I thought now, given it's the new year, would be a good time to just collect up the recent garments that I've been making and share them all with you. And I've got a bit of a mix to share actually. I've got a new dress to share that I just finished this week. I've also got a sweatshirt and a skirt and a top and one other non-dressmaking sewing item. So a real mix of different types of garments and things in this video. So hopefully you'll enjoy hearing all about them. But I'll start off the video as usual with what I'm wearing today. And today here in the south of England it is a very cold but sunny day. And I've got on a cosy handmade sweatshirt. And this is a real old one actually, and I made it using this pattern here, which is the Linden sweatshirt pattern by Grainline Studio. It's quite a nice simple sweatshirt pattern. It's got a raglan sleeve to it, and you can make a t-shirt version too, but I haven't seen a great deal of those around. I've seen more of the sweatshirt. It's got a round neck and quite a straight fit to it. And it's not got the biggest size range. It comes in a US size 0 to 18 up to a bust of 44 inches. But I did see, I think this week, that Grainline had expanded their size range on their Tamarack jacket, which I know is one of their really popular patterns. It's definitely one I've thought about making a few times. So I don't know whether that means they're planning to go and look back over some of our older patterns and extend the size range on them, but it may be. So yeah, who knows if the Linden sweatshirt at some point in the future might be available in a larger size range. But it's quite a nice, simple raglan sleeve sweatshirt pattern. I've got a couple of them. I think this is my favourite one because I love the fabric. It is a fleece back sweatshirting fabric, so nice and cosy for this cold weather. And I just love the print on it. It's got all these little cats, which I think are really cute. It's got like this sort of dark bluey, indigo-y base, and then lots of cats in different colours. And I just think they're really cute. So yeah, I'm enjoying wearing this one. I don't have a lot of garments that are more novelty prints. Yeah, I do love this one. I think when I think I might have gone with the straight size 0 based on my bust measurement, or then my waist and hips would put me as this next size up, and then I ended up taking it a little bit because I think at the time I wasn't so into like a boxy fit, so I've sort of taken it in a bit so it's more of a fitted fit to the sweatshirt, although not too fitted because with it being a fleece back sweatshirt it isn't really stretchy, so yeah, I wouldn't have wanted to make it too fitted, otherwise it might have been a real squeeze to get it on. But yeah, that is what I'm wearing today. I'll put a picture up so you can see what it looks like on. It is keeping me nice and cozy today. But anyway, I'm going to move on now to sharing all of my makes. And if you watch my Vlogmas, you might have seen a couple of these and you won't have seen a couple of the others, I think. So yeah, a bit of a mix of ones shared in Vlogmas and ones that I think are pretty new to YouTube. So I'll kick off first of all with one that I think is new to YouTube. And I've got it here. I'm just going to put it on hanger actually so it's easier to see it. And this is actually a make that I made out of leftover fabric I had from another project. So this is the top, here it is. And this fabric might look familiar because yes, I used it to sew up a dress earlier in the year. I sewed up in this fabric, it's a viscose challis, and I made the Dovestone dress by Izzo Sew Studio, which is a lovely, quite summery dress pattern. I'll put a picture up of the dress I made using that pattern. You can make either as a sort of knee length dress or a full length, and I went for the sort of the maxi length. It's a really lovely pattern. I really enjoyed sewing it. It's quite fun because it's got these long straps that kind of create the back, and then you can wrap them around to create slightly different looks. But yeah, I sewed mine up in a really lovely viscose challis, this fabric, which is a Minerva exclusive viscose challis, so really nice quality. And I was gifted it in exchange for a blog post about that dress. I'll link it down below in case you fancy having a read if you're interested in that pattern. But the dress took, I think, it might have been 3 meters of fabric. But the way you cut it is, you kind of cut, the dress piece patterns, they start off quite small at the body and then flow out quite large at the skirt. So after I cut out all the pattern pieces for the Dovestone dress, I had a couple of quite large pieces at the side left over, and I thought it seemed a shame not to use those pieces. So I had to think about what I could use them for to turn them into another garment, because I thought the fabric's quite cute as well. Yeah, I think it's quite a fun fabric. So what I decided to do was turn them into an Ogden Cami, and here is my Ogden Cami made out of the scraps, and I was pleased to just about be able to squeeze out the leftover fabric. So yeah, yeah, I love the Ogden Cami pattern. I've got it here actually, I'm sure you know it. But yeah, it's a lovely, very simple woven cami top pattern which comes together really nicely. Here it is, it's got this deep V at the front and back and quite a straight fit and these spaghetti straps. And this one has a really good size range. I've got the US 0 to 18 version. There's also, I think it's a 14 to 32 version possibly, which also has bust darts and slightly wider straps. But otherwise it's very, very similar in terms of the deep V-neck and the quite sort of straight fit. So yeah, I decided to make an Ogden Cami. I hadn't made one for quite a while actually. I'd done a few hacks, but not a straightforward, simple cami. And I just about managed to squeeze it out of this fabric, but I did have to, on the back, cut 2 pieces because there wasn't quite enough width to be able to cut both the front and the back on the fold. So you can see down the back I've got this sort of seam line, but I don't think it's too obvious at all, particularly because it's quite a busy print. And I think it could be quite a nice feature anyway, having a split back anyway. So yeah, I'm glad I was able to squeeze out this fabric. I made a couple of slight alterations to the Ogden Cami, which are things I often like to do when I make it. I made the straps just slightly wider because I generally do like to wear a bra underneath, and I find if you make it with the spaghetti straps, it's quite hard to like hide your bra strap underneath. And I also generally always bring up the back just slightly again, just to give a bit more coverage of the bra back, because it is quite a deep V at the back, so it does come down quite low. So I just move it up a little bit just to make it a little bit more practical to wear, and it means it's something I would reach for a little bit more. So yeah, this is my Ogden Cami that I made in this lovely viscose challis fabric. I think I made the straight size 0 possibly. Let me just double check. Yes, I think I did go for this straight size 0, and my bust and waist would put me as a size 0 and my hips would put me as a size 4, so a bit bigger at the hip. But I think I've made it before as a size 0 and found there's enough room on the hips. And to be honest, I was really kind of squeezing this out of the fabric, so I thought if I can get away with just a straight size 0, I will, because I didn't have a great deal of fabric to play with because I was just working with the scraps. But yes, but yeah, I'm really pleased with how it came out. I haven't actually worn it yet. I guess I kind of feel like it is one I could wear in the winter. Maybe if I went out on an evening with a pair of jeans and a little cardi or something. But equally it'll be nice for the summer too. But yeah, I do love the fabric. I think it's quite fun, and I was pleased I had enough scraps to be able to make something that I will actually wear. Because I sometimes find with viscose scraps it's hard to know what to do. I feel like jersey scraps, you can make quite a few different things. I particularly like making knickers, handmade knickers, but yeah, it was nice to be able to use up these viscose scraps and turn it into a cute little cami top. So yes, that is my Ogden Cami. Oh, and I'll put a picture up so you can see what it looks like on. I had a go of styling it tucked in and tucked out, and I quite like both options. So yeah, hopefully I'll get some good wear out of this, yeah, in due course. So yeah, that is my first make I wanted to share. Oh, and I thought I'd mention, just in case you're thinking of maybe making a cami top out of fabric scraps, because I think a cami top is a perfect scrap buster type of make. For the back, where I had the seam down the middle, the only adjustment I made to the pattern piece was, and the pattern piece is designed to be cut on the fold. So what I did when I cut my 2 individual back pieces that I was going to sew together was I made sure to add a 1 centimetre seam allowance to each side, just to make sure the actual final piece, once it was sewn together, ended up the right sort of width. So yeah, I thought I'd just mention that. So yes, the next make I wanted to share is one that is very appropriate for this colder weather at the moment. I have worn and felt very cozy in, and it's a new sweatshirt that I sewed up in December, and this is it here. I really love it. It is super cozy and fluffy and snuggly, and I made this sweatshirt using this pattern here. Which I've got upside down, and here it is. It is the Fibre Mode DD sweatshirt pattern. So it's a pattern that had been on my radar for a while, and I'd liked the look of it, but I had kind of put off trying it because I was really nervous about sewing a zip into a stretchy fabric, because I had quite a bad experience of sewing one into a stretchy fabric when I was fairly new to sewing, and it kind of put me off a little bit, and zips aren't my favourite at the best of times, I guess. So I was just a little bit nervous of trying it again, but then I saw this lovely fleecy fabric that was from Fabric Godmother. It's called their Rory Sherpa fleece. And I just thought I'm going to give it a go because I love this fabric and I think it'll be perfect as a match for this pattern. So yes, here is my 5 Mood DD. So yes, this fabric is a Sherpa fleece from Fabric Godmother, and actually I wasn't really sure what to expect from it, in terms of I wasn't sure maybe whether the inside of it might be a bit rough and the outside would be the only soft bit. But when the fabric turned up, I was really happy actually, because the inside, it's kind of like knitted. You can see it's like a sort of like a jersey knitted fabric, and it's actually really nice and soft. It's really comfy to wear on the inside, and then obviously really snuggly on the outside. But yeah, it's this kind of ecru or sort of yeah, off-white kind of colour with this sort of black leopard print on. I thought it was really fun. It would make a perfect sort of zip up sweatshirt, and I know they're kind of all the rage at the moment, so I thought it'd be nice to have one. So yes, I'll show you again the 5 Mood DD pattern. It's for quite a relaxed, oversized zip up sweatshirt with this large collar. It's got cuffs and a bottom band to it. It's got a good size range to it. It goes from an extra small up to a triple XL, which I think takes you up to a bust of 58 inches. So yes, it goes from bust of 30.5 inches up to 58 inches. And 5 Mood sort of make their patterns in like categories. They kind of group 2 sizes together. So the size 4 and 6 are grouped together to make the extra small pattern size. And then you have small, medium, large, and so on. And for my 5 Mood DD, well, I kind of read the pattern that says it is a little bit oversized, and I wanted mine to be a bit oversized. And my measurements would put me sort of towards the top end of an extra small. So I could have gone with extra small knowing it was oversized, but I thought I'd size up to the small because I thought with this bulky fabric, actually, it may end up feeling a bit tighter than if I'd gone for like a lightweight sort of drapier sort of jersey fabric. So I went for the small. I'm really glad I did, because I think if I'd have gone for the extra small, it might have felt a little bit too small and not had that slightly oversized vibe. And then I made a couple of adjustments. I lengthened the sleeve slightly, I think by just over an inch, which I do in a lot of patterns, as you'll probably know. And I lengthened the body. I think I lengthened the body by, it might be an inch, but then I think I actually made it a little bit shorter once I'd sewed it up. I thought I'd like a little bit shorter than that, so I didn't end up lengthening it by that much in the end. And the pattern actually came together really nicely. Like I said, I was really worried about sewing the zip into the stretchy fabric, because obviously zips are kind of don't stretch and the stretchy fabric can stretch. So what I did, which they didn't mention in the pattern, what I decided to do was I decided to add non-stretch interfacing onto the pattern pieces where I was going to apply the zip, just to stop the fabric stretching, and that worked really well actually. So I'm glad I did that, and I'll definitely do it again if I was sewing a zip onto stretchy fabric, just to use some woven interfacing there to kind of stabilise it for adding the zip. And yeah, and I did find this fabric a little bit of a challenge to work with. I'd say the fabric itself was more of a challenge to work with than the actual pattern, which wasn't too challenging in itself, just because it's so bulky. First of all, when I tried it on my overlocker did not like it at all, and I had to look online for some tips for sewing with sort of bulky fabric on your overlocker. And I found quite a useful, I think it was a blog post maybe, with some tips for changing the overlocker settings to get it to work better with bulky fabric. And I found that really helpful. And I don't often change on my overlocker like the stitch length and width. I do adjust the differential feed a little bit, but I had to adjust it a lot more. I think I had to turn it up really high, that's right, for this fabric. So it's definitely worth experimenting on my overlocker to find a way to get this fabric kind of properly gripped by it. It meant I think I ended up turning up the stitch length on which the longest settings, and then turning the differential feed up high, and that worked so much better. So it was definitely worth adjusting for those settings to work the bulky fabric. And also I found when I was doing some bits on my sewing machine, the more fiddly bits, like inserting the kind of collar, you kind of sew it in around here, I found I was getting worried about my sewing machine not catching all of the different pieces of fabric that I was trying to sew together. Just because they're quite bulky, it would be easy for one to slide out and me not even notice, because it's hard to see between all of the fleecy furriness. So what I did was quite a lot of hand basting actually of all the pieces together before I actually sewed on the sewing machine. And it did take a bit longer with hand basting, but I think actually maybe it saved me time overall, because if I hadn't have done that, I'd have probably had to spend a bit of time catching extra bits that I hadn't caught when I realised that one of the sort of pieces of fabric had just sort of popped out. So yeah, I did quite a lot of hand basting, particularly around inserting the zip and the collar, and that did help a lot. The only other change I made is because I used the same fabric for the cuffs and the bottom band, I just widened both the cuffs and the bottom band slightly, because it's not very stretchy fabric, and I think the pattern does say about using ribbing fabric for the cuffs, and the bottom band. So I thought, well, if it's designed for ribbing fabric, it's expecting the fabric to stretch a lot, and this fabric doesn't as much. So I just widened them slightly so they didn't feel too tight on me. So I'm glad I did that. And I think also it might have been a struggle if I hadn't widened them to actually get them to sort of ease into the larger pieces when I was sewing them together as well. So they almost needed to be widened a bit to be able to ease in. Otherwise I might have been having to really sort of stretch them very hard to try and get them in, if that makes sense. But so yes, it was a really fun project actually. I feel like I learned something from putting the zip into this fabric, and I do feel like now I would definitely do it again, inserting a zip into jersey. It wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. It just needed a bit of time and preparation to make sure that it went in smoothly. I went for like a chunky zip on it. I found this zip on eBay, so it's quite a nice chunky zip, which I thought suited the whole chunky oversized sweatshirt. But yeah, so that is my 5 mood DD. I did really enjoy sewing it. It was quite nice actually to have the challenge of the fleecy fabric and also of inserting the zip and feel like they actually went okay. One thing I did do as a bit of a mistake, but I'm glad it turned out okay, is I kind of forgot that this fabric has like a nap, like a corduroy. You can see the kind of fur goes in one direction. And I didn't really think about that when I was cutting it out. I think because I was doing Vlogmas, and Vlogmas is a bit hectic, so I was just like, let's get on with it, just not think, just get on. So yeah, I ended up cutting out the pieces. Luckily I cut them out all in the same direction, but with the fur going upwards rather than downwards. So it's kind of smooth this way rather than smooth that way. But actually I think it was a happy accident, because I think it makes it look even a little bit more furry being that way up. So actually it didn't turn out too bad, even though it was a bit of a mistake, and if I'd have probably thought about it I'd have gone the other way. I'm quite happy actually with the way it's ended up, because I do quite like the fur going up and making it look a little bit more shaggy, I guess. So yeah. Anyway, I'll put a picture up of what the DD looks like on, so you can kind of see the sizing. As you can see, even having sized up one size, it isn't super oversized and it's quite bulky fabric. And I thought I'd mention, I've actually written a blog post all about the DD sweatshirt, and I've included in there my tips on sewing with the Sherpa fleece fabric, including the overlocker settings I used. And I've also included some tips on inserting the zip and then inserting the actual collar once you put the zip in. So I tried to make the article quite helpful, because I thought it's things I might have found quite useful when I was going to sew the DD. So I'll link it down below in case you fancy having a read if you're thinking of sewing up this pattern or kind of like a similar pattern. I know there are a few out there with this zip and that kind of style to them, but yeah, I'm really happy I gave it a go, and I have worn it and it's super cozy, so I'm definitely going to enjoy wearing it over the winter here. So yes, that is my fibre mood DD in this lovely Sherpa fleece fabric. I think it is still in stock in Fabric Gone, though I think I saw recently they've actually got a couple of different colourways now, maybe like a darker colourway, maybe like a darker brown. I can't remember. There are a couple more colourways too, so I'll link the fabric down below in case you fancy having a look. It's lovely and soft and snuggly, so definitely perfect for sewing something for your winter wardrobe. But yeah, that is my second make I had to share. So the next make that I've got to share is actually a remake of a garment that I made quite a few years ago now, I guess, when I was fairly new to sewing again, that I really loved. And it's a skirt that I made using this pattern here, which is the Camden Pinafore and Skirt pattern by Nina Lee. So it's a really lovely pinafore and skirt pattern. The pinafore is quite a fitted pinafore with an invisible zip at the back. I haven't actually made that, but I made the skirt a couple of times. It's got quite a fitted waist and then slightly A-line shape. It's sort of got made in 2 pieces at the front, so there's top stitching down the middle here where the 2 pieces are sewn together. It's got these cool angled pockets and then an invisible zip at the back. And it's kind of like a wintry skirt, I think. It's designed to be made in medium weight fabrics with body. So yes, I made a version quite a long time ago in this rust coloured corduroy, and I loved it so much and I wore it a lot. And in the course of it getting worn, I managed to get some bleach on the front of it. It wasn't a big patch or anything, it was just a little teeny splash. I don't even know how I managed doing it. It's just one of those things I saw in there one day and thought, oh no. But yes, anyway, I carried on wearing it after I'd kind of had the accident and got it a little bit spoilt on the front. But at the time I thought I'm going to get a bit more of that fabric, just in case I do decide I want to remake it and make it all nice and new. And then somehow in the course of time, it also somehow managed to get a bit sun damaged as well. And at that point I thought, right, it's looking really tatty now. I think I should get out my fabric that I'd had stored away that I'd bought just in case I wanted to remake it and actually get on with remaking it. So that is what I did in December. It was in December or maybe November. Towards the end of last year anyway. I made my second version and here it is. All nice and shiny and new and looking a lot more, yeah, a lot more new than my old version had, which had got very sort of worn with age, I guess. So yeah, this is my Camden skirt in this lovely rust coloured needle cord by Robert Kaufman. It's a really nice needle cord, although it's quite a fine needle cord. It's got a bit of structure to it, so I think it works really well for this skirt. So it's got these cute pockets, which are lined. The skirt is fully lined too, so you can see the lining in there. I think it's like a viscose lining fabric. I got the fabric and the lining both from Guthrie Garney. And at the back, it's got the invisible zip here, you can see. You can see the little tag, it's not totally invisible there. I actually borrowed the zip from the first version because I had bought another zip to use for this version, but I didn't quite like the colour, but I quite like how this colour of this one really ties in with the lining, even though you can't see the lining, I know it's there, so yeah. It was really nice to revisit the pattern, and I actually tweaked the sizing on this one slightly because I'd always found my first one was just a little bit loose around the waist. I think for my first one I'd made, I think for the waist I'd gone between, like for size 9, I'd graded between 8 and a 10. And I don't know why I had, because my waist measurement would put me as an 8. I think maybe I'd thought that I'd kind of wanted to sort of tuck in jumpers and things, so I'd maybe gone a little bit larger so I could tuck them in. But I found it just felt a little bit too loose, so I thought since I was remaking, I'll just make it that slightly bit smaller, and I did size down to the straight size 8 on the waist, although I did grade out again, I think to a size 9 on the hips, because I quite liked the sort of size there, so, and that would sort of correlate with my hips measurement. But yeah, just size down slightly at the waist. And one thing I noticed, actually, funnily enough, when I was sort of retracing the pattern pieces to the size 8, was when I looked at the pockets, I'd actually cut them out wrong the first time, and they're designed to be wider than this. I think because there's quite a few sizes included on the pattern piece, and a couple of them had quite similar, like, dashed lines. I just gone for the wrong one. And so the pockets are actually designed to be maybe about here-ish, definitely wider. And so I thought maybe I should rectify that on my second version and make the wider pocket, but actually I quite like the narrow pocket at the top, so I thought I'd just carry on going with the slightly incorrect pockets. So I guess my pockets are probably slightly smaller than they should be. They might be a bit more generous if I'd have gone for the right size, but I quite like the look of the slimmer pockets anyway. So I just went with it again, that kind of, again, a sort of happy accident. And yeah, it was really nice to sew. I find it comes together really nicely. And I found particularly this time, it was quite nice sewing it again because I felt like a lot of my sewing was neater than the first time round, particularly around the finish, around the zip. You have to kind of, I'll show you on the inside, I'll have a look here. You have to kind of hand stitch around the lining here to kind of sew it to the zip once you've sort of sewn the other piece in place. And I remember my first time it was a bit scrappy and I struggled to get it all sort of turned under neatly, and I felt like it came a bit easier this time, so that was nice. I'm quite happy with the finish. And actually, the first time round for my first version, I used Cute Pro for the lining, Cute Pro Bemberg, and that was very slippery and hard to handle. And this time, this viscose felt easier to handle. I don't think it's just that my sewing experience is better, so it was just much easier because I'm better at sewing now. I think it actually is a bit easier to handle. This fabric is slightly less slippery than the Cute Pro Bemberg, being like a viscose lining, but it's still nice and slippery for the inside of a skirt, so it works fine. And the Cute Pro Bemberg was lovely. It was just quite tricky to get to behave. So yeah, anyway, this is my revamped Camden skirt. I don't think I've got a picture of this one actually, so I'll get a picture in a moment and I'll put it in here so you can see what it looks like on and how it fits around the waist now. It's definitely a bit more snug around the waist. So I don't know if I could fit the sort of chunkiest jumper totally in, but I could definitely tuck it in at the front and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's got lovely darts at the back as well. So it's a really nice shape to this skirt. So it's really nice to recreate it. I think this colour is very wintry and sort of rich. So yeah, I'm really glad to have finally got around to remaking, because I think sometimes going back and remaking something isn't the most exciting project because you kind of know what you're going to get at the end already. It's not like trying something totally new or making something in a different fabric and seeing how it will look different, which is why I think maybe it took me a while to come around to making it, but I am really glad I did. I haven't actually worn this one out again yet, but I definitely am going to this winter. I'll definitely be wearing it, so yeah. I am really glad I remade it. I don't think this fabric is still in stock at Guthrie Garney. I did make it quite a long time ago. But I'll link the pattern down below, and I'll link Guthrie Garney's website generally. I'm sure they have some nice needle cords there still anyway. So yeah, that is my remade Needly Camden skirt that I finally got round to making. And then the next thing that I wanted to share is my new dress that I finished this week. And I really, really enjoyed making this one. I'm really happy with how it turned out. And I'm glad I finally got around to trying this pattern. And the pattern I tried is this one here. It is the Saltwater Slip Dress by Friday Pattern Company. So I know it's quite a popular one. It's been around for a while now, so I'm quite late coming to it. But It's a really lovely slip dress. I'll show you the line drawings with these sort of fine straps, and at the back you kind of add on little sort of bra adjustable pieces, so you can kind of lengthen them or shorten them. So I thought that was quite cool in my first time trying that. Then it's got bust darts, but it has got a fairly sort of straight fit to it, but you can add in optional ties to sort of cinch it in around the waist. You can make either a shorter, sort of above the knee length version, or a longer kind of midi length version that has slits at each side. And you don't cut it on the bias like some slip dresses, it's just cut on the grain line. So I kind of preferred that option. I'm not sure about bias cut things on me. I don't think I've made any, but when I have tried them on, I'm never quite sure. So I like the idea of a slip dress cut on the grain line rather than on the bias. But yeah, I was been quite keen to give it a try for quite a while. I wasn't really sure if it would suit me or not, but then I saw some fabric and I just thought that would make a perfect saltwater slip dress. I've really just got to try it. Oh, and I should mention the sizing too. It's got a really good size range, like Friday Pattern Co. patterns generally do. It goes from an extra small up to a 7X, which takes you up to bust of 60 inches. So yes, I will show you my version of the fabric that made me want to actually give this pattern a go. And so yes, this is my slip dress here. And yeah, this is a viscose challis fabric that came from Minerva. It's one I bought. It's really good value. I'll link it down below. Yeah, it's quite inexpensive and it's really nice. And I just love the print. It's got this sort of rose print on it. So kind of like a ditzy floral with a rose. And I just thought it was quite 90s. So I thought it would go really well with the 90s slip dress. So yeah, when I saw it, I just thought I'm going to have to give it a go. And I thought with this fabric not being too pricey, it'll be a good one to try and see if I do feel it suits me. And if I don't, then at least I haven't spent too much money on the fabric. So yeah, this is my slip dress. I went for the midi length. I actually didn't make any adjustments to the length. I thought, let's just see how it turns out. And I quite like the length actually. So, because I often do lengthen things and I'm 5'6" reference. I added in the waist ties because I thought I probably would want to cinch it in the waist. And it's got these lovely slits at the side, which I think are a really nice feature and make it a lot more practical to be able to walk in it. And then yeah, you make this kind of, all the sort of finish at the top is all with bias binding, which I always love a bit of bias binding. And it's got these little sort of bra strap loops at the back. So you kind of have the bra strap there and a little loop down there so you can adjust the length of the straps. Actually, the only bit that the finish of the whole thing I found was really good. The only bit I'm not so happy with the finish on is on this bra strap at the back here, you can see here, you kind of finish the end where you've cut it with a little zigzag and then stitch it down. And yeah, I just feel like, I guess with the viscose, it's kind of squashed and got a bit wider, so it doesn't look totally neat there. And I don't think it's something you'd really notice, but it's only a bit of the dress where I'm not like completely happy with the finish of it. And I think if I made it again, I'd maybe think of a different way to do it to make it look a little bit better there maybe. But yeah, other than that, it was a real joy to sew. I really, really enjoyed sewing it. I do like Friday Pattern Company patterns. I think they always come together in an interesting way. It's got these, you can't really see the bust dart, I'll show you on the inside. It's got these bust darts here, which provide a bit of nice shaping. Can you see it? There it is, the bust dart there, which provides a bit of shaping. Yeah, it was just a fun sew actually. I did go wrong at one point in the sewing process, and I thought I'd mention that. It was nothing to do with the instructions themselves. They are very, very clear. It was just that I didn't read them carefully enough and I ended up doing things in the wrong order, and it created quite a fiddly situation to fix. So basically the pattern has this back seam down the centre back, and that was all nice and smooth. I sewed the seam and then I overlocked the edges just together and then just pressed to the side. And I kind of assumed I could do the same for the side seams. So I sewed down to the point where you have to sew above the sort of slit, and then I overlocked both of the seams together. And then it made it really awkward because you get down to the slit and you have to kind of press each seam to the side and then kind of stitch around the top. And I'd overlocked both together, so I couldn't press them open like that, if you know what I mean, because it's all overlocked together. So I had to kind of unpick a bit and then try and overlock those individual bottom bits and then press them to the side, and it made it quite fiddly. It was just a silly mistake. I think I'm just so used to sewing seams and then finishing with an overlock rather than overlocking first. I hadn't even thought it would be the other way around. So it's worth mentioning, just in case you're the same, with those side seams you do have to overlock the top bit first before you sew those seams together to make it easier when you're coming to finish the slit at the bottom. I did manage to get it fixed, but it was really fiddly unpicking and then trying to sort of get little bits underneath my overlocker just to finish off those bits, because I don't want to leave any raw edges anywhere that might sort of fray, because yeah, I really like this dress and I wanted to get it as smart as possible so it would sort of stand the test of time. So yeah, that was a bit of a faff, so I definitely wouldn't do that again. I'll know what I'm doing and make sure I do it in the right order next time. But yeah, it was a really enjoyable sew. Oh, and I should mention, in terms of sizing, so my measurements would put me as an extra small on the bust and then a small on the waist and hips. But I ended up sizing up. I sized up one size on the bust and one size on the hips too, because I really wanted to make this version as like a layering piece for winter. I really like the idea of wearing it over like a sort of roll neck cozy top with some like black boots and black tights and that sort of thing. So when I had a look at the finished garment measurements, I thought if I went for my size, it might be a little bit too snug at the hips and the bust when I did layer a top underneath it. So I thought I'd size up and then I could always cinch it in at the waist to give a bit of shape. And it didn't look like I needed to size up at the waist based on the sort of finished garment measurements and the sort of straight fit of it. So I did that and I'm really happy with how it's turned out. Actually, I'm glad I did size up there. I think particularly on the hips, it might be a bit too clingy if I hadn't gone for one larger size. And I'll put a picture up so you can see what it looks like on. I've styled it here, as you can see how I'm planning to wear it in the winter with that roll neck top and chunky boots, and just nice and cozy and definitely that 90s vibe. I also think it would be really nice with like a t-shirt underneath too for kind of that transitional weather, I guess. And I haven't actually tried it on without a top underneath yet. Just because it's been really cold here. At some point I'll try it on without a t-shirt on underneath and see how it feels. It's like more of a summery dress, and think about whether I might like to make a summery version. And if I did make a summery version, whether I would want to size back down to my actual measurements, or whether I'm quite happy with this fit for a summery version too. But yeah, I'm quite happy with those sizings for the wintry version, and I'm quite happy with the length too. I wasn't sure how it'd turn out and whether I would have regretted not lengthening it, but I thought I'd just go with it, and yeah, I really like how it's turned out. So yes, I'm really glad to have tried the Assault to Sit pattern. It was another really fun pattern to sew by Friday Pattern Co. And yeah, I think I would like to revisit it. It was definitely a really fun sew. It's just whether I would kind of need another one in my wardrobe, or maybe if I see some fabric that might jump out to me, I'll give it another go. But yeah, definitely really enjoyed sewing this one. And then my final make that I've got to share in this video is a non-garment make, like I mentioned before, but it is a sewing make, not a knitting make, like I often share at the end of my makes videos. And it is another Boxy zipper pouch. So I made a couple of Boxy zipper pouches over the festive period, and I talked about them in my last week's video, my big sort of New Year's sewing catch-up video. I'll link that above in case you haven't seen that one. And then I made another Boxy zipper pouch for my husband because he got for Christmas a razor that came with lots of different little attachments to it. And it just came in a box, which wasn't very practical for storing it. It didn't come with any bag or anything to pop all the bits in. So I said I can make you a Boxy zip pouch to fit everything in, so it's all together and nice and easy to find when you go to use it. And he said he quite liked that. So I got my fabric suitcase down from the loft and he chose some fabric. It's a cotton poplin fabric, and this is the fabric here. This is the little pouch. It's a really nice cotton poplin, actually. I got it quite a long time ago to make him a pair of pyjamas, which he still wears. And I've also made him a sleeping mask in this fabric, which he chose the fabric for the sleeping mask, so he obviously likes it. And it's nice to be able to use up all the scraps I had left over from the pyjamas. So yeah, he chose this fabric. It's on the outside and the lining is the same as well. He wanted it nice and simple. And I got like a navy zip to kind of match the navy check colour here. And yeah, it was really fun to sew up. You can see it holds everything nicely in there. It's quite full of all the gadgets and things that come with the razor. And yeah, it was really fun to sew another one. This one was a bit more challenging actually because of the check matching. I had to unpick once and try again because my checks didn't quite match the first time I sewed them to the zipper. Yeah, I don't think my husband would probably notice or care if they were a little bit sort of off and didn't quite match, but for myself I wanted to make sure it was done properly. So yeah, I did take that time unpicking and re-sewing, and I'm quite happy with how it matches now. It's got the little tabs at the end, and actually when I made my first Boxy zip patch I thought these tabs were just sort of to look cute and didn't really perform a purpose, but actually I do find they're quite useful to hold when you're pulling the zip open. It's quite nice to be able to hold on to them to be able to kind of get that sort of pull on the zip. So yeah, they do perform a purpose as well as looking quite sweet. And yes, for this one I use the same YouTube tutorial as I'd used my first, which I'll link down below, which comes together really nicely. But I actually altered the dimensions of this one because my husband's razor is pretty much about as long as this bag, and it's slightly longer, this one. The one I'd made for myself and my daughter, those ones, would have been too short to fit the razor in, so I knew I needed to adjust the shape. So I had a look online and I found this blog post. It's really handy actually, I'll link it down below as well. And basically it explains how whatever dimensions you want to make your Boxy zipper pouch in, it shows you how to calculate how big the pattern pieces are that you need to cut. It sort of shows you the formula you need to use, and it's quite simple. So I kind of measured his razor to see how long that would be, to know how long it needed to be. I'd added a little extra length, so there's a bit of room there. And I wanted to make it a little bit less tall because I thought that would be a better shape, and he didn't really need it to be really tall for what he needed to fit in. So I kind of figured out kind of what sort of dimensions I wanted it, and I calculated the dimensions using the blog post, and it came out just right. So it was really handy to be able to do that, and it was quite fun to try it in a different shape and sort of give that formula a go and check it works, and I'll be able to use it in the future, I guess, if I want to make another bag and alter the dimensions slightly. So yeah, I'm really pleased with how it turned out, and he's really pleased that it fits nice and neatly in his, like, he's got in his bedside table drawer, and it just means it's all together now, and whenever he wants to go and use a particular attachment, he doesn't have to go searching through the drawer trying to find the right one amongst a lot of other stuff. So yeah, it's nice and neat and organised. So yeah, it was nice to make another Boxy zip pouch. I do find they come together really nicely, and they're quite satisfying. There's top stitching, and so yeah, it's quite a fun little sewing project, and I think it'll be quite a good palette cleanser between like garments and things, where you don't need to worry about the fit, and you can use up some nice scraps, and quite handy for storing things in. So yeah, that is my final make. I wanted to share this little Boxy zip pouch, a nice scrap buster, and nice and handy for my husband. So yeah, that is that. So that's everything that I've got to share in this video. So I think that pretty much brings me up to date with what I've been sewing. And I hope you enjoyed hearing all about those makes. It's been quite nice to talk about them where they're still quite fresh in my mind, so I can make sure I get all the details right and that sort of thing. I was actually thinking this week I might film a sewing plans fabric haul type of video, but I've actually ordered a couple of new fabrics this week and they haven't arrived yet. So I'm hoping they'll arrive early next week so I can do that video for next weekend. So do look out for that one. Yes, thank you very much for watching today's video. I hope you've had a good week, and I'll hopefully see you again next weekend. But in the meantime, hope you have a lovely week and manage to fit in a bit of crafting, and yes, see you again soon. Bye!